Good to be here. That's like, I've been quite a couple times to the Ukraine already, not so often to Kiev. I think it's the second time. I suppose my co-speaker here on stage, Lucy, which is one of our coaches, the reason I brought her with me is because I admire her skills to be very pragmatic and not only following certain Scrum or Agile books. And I know there are quite some around. I saw those in the front. But it's also to bring those theories back to practice and make them work. And I think she's doing very well. And also sometimes she has trouble with her sense of humor, at least if I tell jokes.
Yeah, that's true. I'm really happy to be telling this, telling about our Agile experiments in FlixMobility with Daniel Krauss, who is, apart from being the CIO, also a really cool guy who tells jokes that almost everybody understands almost all the time. But he's also the keen volleyball player and half marathon runner. I think he's worth of applause. That's how we should start. Okay, so what are we talking about today? We'll be guiding you through 18 months of Agile experiments in FlixMobility. We started with Agile Journey October 2016, and now we'll tell you all the steps we went through and where they lead us. And we, of course, would share the lessons learned.
So, I mean, there's a reason we're not a regular software company, neither an Agile consultancy. What we are is, meanwhile, Europe's largest long-distance mobility company. I'm not saying bus company anymore because over the last couple of months we also started trains, at least in Germany. When it all started, there were no buses in Germany, no long-distance buses. This is quite unusual. Almost any other European country had them. Almost everybody knows that, but in Germany it was prohibited just to protect what the government has been created in terms of rail infrastructure. Thanks to the European Union, they had to break that. Back in time, we just were there and thought that's a good idea because mobility is a growing market. And in Germany, you didn't have any other option than going by your own car, the train, or an airplane, which is all of them relatively expensive. So there was quite a portion of people who couldn't afford traveling, visiting relatives, or just exploring new cities. When it all came up, we weren't very much bus expert. We didn't even have an idea of how we do proper scheduling. We were at that back in time. We just had the idea to just take that chance and really, give in something new in the mobility market and a new mode of transportation to the people. And when that happened, it happened independently in two cities, Berlin and Munich. Well, surprise, two of the larger cities in Germany. And there were two teams starting almost in parallel. The one team was green. Maybe this is the reason why we are still green, because they were a little earlier. And the other one was blue, and we did almost the same thing. What we did is we brought individual bus companies, meanwhile 250 of them on average, together, which were very much regional focused and were very good in operations, but had no clue about how to globally optimize, to build proper schedules, to do yield management, for instance, so set proper prices, and also to attract the customers. Those two teams thought they can do better, and over time it proved that this is the case. But the companies, they beat up each other for quite a while until we realized, five of us, it makes more sense if we just unite, just because not having a corporate or one of the legacy players succeed, but us. When we brought the companies together, even though they were relatively small, there were challenges in terms of the structure and how to adjust, and also we really accelerated the growth, which also comes with certain challenges. 2015 then, we became the market leader in Germany. Having 3 years on top of that, we are now transporting over 40 million people annually and have transported over 100 million. We've started a business in the US 3 months ago. I said we do trains, not only buses, because we realized people want to have a good experience being transported. They don't really care whether it's a bus or a train or something maybe even similar. And we do that in 28 countries, have without the drivers, since they're not employed. And we also don't own the buses, but a single one in order to have, face the legal requirements. We do that out of a bunch of offices, I stopped counting, I think it's 8 or 9, and without those assets, we are 1,200 people, and a little bit more than 200 of them are pure techies, and the vast majority is, you know, service people and shop people, feet on the ground. So if you just discount them and only look at the real headquarter or overhead functions, it's, well, a quarter of us being techies means product owners, agile coaches, some digital marketing pros, and especially also engineers. We did all that, and we had to suffer from what every growing company is suffering from. We got slow. In a startup mode, you don't know to really take agile practices into account because you are agile. Running a startup, creating it is agile. You just go to someone and solve stuff. Over time, well, it's not that easy anymore, and productivity, it suffered. So we hired more and more engineers, for example, but we didn't, you know, realize more and more stuff. It just took longer. We were less productive, obviously, which is a challenge because then you get slow. And also, even when we were 100 techies, well, the business was like, okay, 100 people, you know, code monkeys? Seriously, what are you guys doing? You're hilariously expensive, and you need super extras like noise canceling phones, and you need, you know, everybody needs to carry the stuff behind you. You need cool coaches, and it's all fuzzy and blurry and nice, and we have to suffer, and we don't even know what you're doing. So that was a challenge because you need a trustful relationship to the business, because at the end, well, someone has to pay the bill. And it took forever in order to deliver, not only because of the productivity challenges, but also because things were tangled. Would I do it the same way again and start building a monolith? Probably yes, because in the beginning it's time to market, and you cannot really discuss how a cool microservice is being defined, what the boundaries of self-contained systems can be. This is too much. You really have to ship stuff, and it works, but at some point in time you just look back and there's that monolith, and then teams are, you know, really tangled, and it takes forever. They have to wait for another team, foundation, operations, whatever. Everybody's waiting for each other, and you can't ship as often as you would.
Right, and you can also see probably the Conway's law on the slide. Who has ever, who has ever used it in reality? Yeah, to transform the company, say, because, you know, if the communication structure follows, then you can change the communication structure, and, you know, you will have the different company in a way. So these are the reasons to transform, but then we got to actually do that.
Exactly. I mean, that was a brave thought, that we can reverse engineer Conway's law, so to say. And yeah, as Lucy said, we just had only to start that. And therefore, we just set ourselves a goal. We really wanted to act more together, so more product-centric, bringing business and tech closer together anymore, because I think only if this happens and you just cut it in pieces according to business units or ultimately according to the customer's need, you remain adjustable and in the same time stable, like in that case, the swarm of mackerels. We come later to the reasons why we think it's been like that. And well, we just wanted to be a great company and together be successful. And that was very important because you can fall apart easily after a certain speed of growth. And well, ultimately the truth is you just lose money if you do so. And bringing things together at the same time remaining adjustable was the goal.
Right, and we wanted, apart from the engineering role that, you know, was there and will also be there in the company, we wanted to strengthen it with 3 different roles. That is the purpose role, and the product owners are the representatives. Then there is the autonomy goal behind the role, which Agile coaches represent. And there is the new role that does not really exist in the books, but we really needed it, the mastery one. And the people managers help us have it in reality. So you probably know what product owners do. They translate business requirements. Agile coaches help teams become autonomous, and they coach and they help and they remove impediments and work on different levels of organization. People managers do that on individual level, and if we have anything that we need to solve, like kind of court case, we think we're doing this wrong, you think you're doing this right, so let's come to the people manager. He'll help us decide what is really happening. He's like the person who is looking at the system from the outside of the system. So these are the 3 roles we started. And then we went through a range of experiments or the steps that we evolved the organization with. And the first one was flat hierarchy. It's really easy to talk to Daniel Krauss, you know? He's the top of the organization, but we have very few, like there is only one layer between the teams and Daniel. These are VPs and people managers, and if you want to, that's so easy. Then the next thing that we really wanted and needed to do is the team self-design event. We'll talk more about that today. We had a bunch of really cool people and a bunch of really good business people. Really cool people, I mean engineers and business people. And we needed to align somehow the process so they work together on business domains, they help each other, and they have as smooth collaboration as possible. And we decided that they are wise enough to do that if we provide them the necessary rules and limitations. And after the team self-design event, we had the FlixIgnition. In order to bridge the gap between what it was and what we want to be, there should be something to help them have new infrastructure and have the hiring process and some other stuff. After that, we had chapters and communities. We started with, 19, and we'll tell you how it all went. Then we had autonomous teams, but we also wanted to share the knowledge and do the innovation stuff, and we started Hacker Days. First, it was 1 Hacker Day every month. Now we have 2 Hacker Days every 2 months. These are kind of hackathons where people can get together with anybody in the company and do something outside their core practices or outside their team purpose, do something. And then sometimes their projects become epics in their team backlog. Sometimes it just, we experimented and we failed, and that's fine. And apart from that, we also are doing OKRs. That was in the beginning a bit painful because aligning business and engineers is not that easy. But as soon as we started aligning OKRs with our roadmaps, we understood that we are really working on different sides of the same aims, and that really boosted our motivation, because it's really cool to know that business is doing that for this purpose, and we are doing the different thing for the same purpose. Wow, we all work together for the same company, for the same aim. And the next thing, we do so many good stuff. That's so cool. The Living Style Guide. Because we have so many autonomous teams, and we have, frankly speaking, back-end culture mostly, we started thinking, so how can we make all of our products, all 20-something teams working on different products, look actually the same, consistent, good, and the user experience would be top-notch as well. We thought that Living Style Guide would be a way out. We are doing it for more than a year, and yeah, we have a lot of progress in there. And the last but not the least, to also share the knowledge and to also help get rid of the island thinking and to really share the lessons learned. We started doing FlixTech Summit. It's the two-day event every year so far, where we enable everybody to make a presentation and to speak out about what they have learned during the year. It can be the technical presentation, some agile experiments, it can be really anything, and anybody can participate.
So a couple notes on these. When we prepared for that session, the only fear Lucy had is that I'll come on stage very similar as I did back in the last FlixTech Summit. I was talking about how to not lead like Darth Vader. Well, how better express that than wearing a Darth Vader costume? But, I didn't do it. Also interesting is, as I said earlier, the team self-design event was nothing I had in mind. This was a little bit risky in depth later on, but it came to the company from the outside. So I know Alexei for a while already, and he brought another colleague, Greg, not here today, I suppose, and both just brought us also in the management to decide doing so, and therefore has quite a stake. And I also see another dude sitting around here who, for instance, was part of the initial team of the Hacker Days. That was also nothing which, I decided. It just happened by itself. which is great. And if you realize that there are good things coming out of that, and the most prominent example lately is that the voice interaction, so we leveraging Alexa or Google Home and these kind of things, that's a pure Hackaday project. We'd never prioritized it in advance because we didn't think the value is there yet. Teams just did it, and now an independent new team is appearing out of that. And it's the same with the Living Style Guide. That's a project being driven here out of the Ukraine, out of our office in Kharkiv. And they also do it independently and spread it across the organization, then inviting different other stakeholders to challenge that and benchmark, like Alpha Bank, which I didn't even know. Potentially it's because it's around here, the area. And that just, it works without the top management clearly giving advice, because I anyhow have no fucking clue anymore what our people are doing.
I would like to add, we wanted to boost, other people awareness about UI UX practices, and we thought maybe we can bring somebody from the outside, and we decided to have a Spotify speaker, and we got yes. So we had this talk in April, and that really helped the whole company to start, okay, so we want the UI UX person in our domain. Oh, we think we'll do this user lab, because everybody probably knows that not building a feature is so much, it saves money, right? Building the features from the very beginning the right way. So this is like the environment that I would like to be working on.
So when we started all that, we came across with a couple of roles. Most of them are standard, so nothing special. People manager is a little special, and we're also dealing with a clear definition because we saw the need that we really decouple the certain areas of power, so to say, so we won't suffer Peter's principle as an example, and someone who really takes care only about the people and not necessarily, forces a certain piece of technology because he or she is familiar with. That works quite well. And we also started with chapters. To be frank, the definition of chapters and domains and tribes, well, it's a little different with us as with Spotify, and also the whole model has similarities, but it's not the same. I just try to do what Henrik always said. Well, don't copy it. We borrowed something, which is fair. And in that case of chapters, we borrowed just way too much. We started with, 19 chapters or so.
Yeah, like 19. I checked, yeah.
Hilariously many. Later on in the lessons learned, I tell you why it didn't work. But at the end, well, the people said this is fucked up, and they reduced it to only 4.
4 currently.
And that works now much better. And these 4 chapters also drive all the OKRs, which are not necessarily the teams work close together with the business on, but there are more requirements to have a stable and scalable platform. So from a pure tech perspective. And communities means groups of interest. That's easy. So everything, what we do, and if there's a certain interest and you need to drive certain things, let's take PHP as an example. If there's a new framework and you want to adopt that, it's not necessarily clearly related to any business requirement, but there's a need, and it's not only in one team possibly, but in different teams. So therefore, communities can be founded and are alive, like different of them.
All right, my part, right? Okay, so the thing is, the team self-design event had 3 main reasons to be done, and the first one was aligning business and engineers. So we wanted to do, and we did, the domains that correspond to the business needs. So some, say, group of products that the domain, the business people who are the business owners of this domain care about. And that was one of the reasons. The other one was, say, boost of technology and innovation. So we use the top-notch, excellent, best technology ever. And the third one was self-organization. We believe that people are wise enough to really take all of them to work and to help us deliver better products.
Since we had a certain structure, a functional structure, before doing that, that meant we had mobile as a department, operations as a department, PHP as a department, Java as a, so on and so on and so on. We thought how we can structure these teams accordingly, so it's not totally random. when we do so. And the teams itself focus on certain products with clear product or like domain boundaries, so they can really take care of end-to-end from a database perspective, whatever we're dealing with, in our case, FlixOS and Kubernetes cluster, until dealing with the UI kit and the style guide, just providing a good outcome to the customer. Within the company, you still need to talk to business and arrange somehow communication, and we wanted to make that, especially for the business, as easy as it gets to follow our new structure. So we came and sorted our product teams into different domains, which clearly mirror the structure of the business, which is relatively easy. It's not only line business what we do, so not only just on a scheduled basis move people back and forth. We also charter buses, and that is a little different from how it works. So it appeared to be an own domain. Customer service is pretty clear. There is not only pre-sales and just selling a ticket, it's also post-sales, and there are certain requirements that people get their answers. Customer line product is the largest domain, of course, because this is what the core business has been doing. It's just moving people, and it's basically, if you go to the website, this is everything you see, not only on the website, but also on the apps, summarized under customer line business, so all the customer experience. Finance, purely inside, but after a certain size, people, ask, you have annual audits, all that, aka bullshit, but you have to take care of this. Marketing, well, what do? We're an e-commerce company. That means we spend hella lots of money at Google and Facebook and the others, and you somehow have to also, currently, for instance, help those marketing people to do that efficiently, and therefore create some products. The latest one is called Bidder, to just make sure that we do that, automated and not manually taking care about millions and millions of keywords. Network planning is a side of what we do in tech, the core of our business. So I'm not saying we're like Uber but different, but I'm saying we're like Amazon but different. The reason is mobility is usually regionally structured, and we had a talk yesterday night at dinner. In our case, we want to globally optimize, and therefore you have to come up with a schedule which works perfectly together. And in difference of other transportation companies, we do that very much data-based. And what we do with this is we create a certain content and inventory, because it matters at least the same as the price itself, that you can get from where you want to, where you are, to you want to be. Let's just take an example. If you want to go from Kharkiv to Lviv, but there is only a trip from Kharkiv to Kiev, you wouldn't care whether it's €1 or €5, because you do not want to go to Kiev. And therefore, taking into consideration what is the best schedule, the best inventory we provide is crucial. Operations, well, it's traffic control, making sure that the buses are not late, and if they are late, informing the customers properly. Platform and security, also easy, that's foundational services. So we're running heavily on AWS and on Kubernetes, and obviously being exposed to the outside, so we just have to take care that works properly. Revenue management is pricing, yield management. So making sure that everybody gets the price he or she deserves, and we need in order to act to operate profitably. And business data services is more new initiatives. So if we talk about really having a data foundation where everybody sits on top of and can leverage the same data, come to the same conclusion, or if we play around with new machine learning, attention, bullshit bingo, AI technology, this has been sorted in there. And the fun fact is, this is also not being decided from the top. We just did that in many iterations. We just talked to the top management, the lead architect, so it's been sorted in properly, not only according to the business, but also how we would like to decouple the monolith, which was still in place back then. And we talked to the chapter representative because we assume they were subject matter experts in their area, former team leads, product owners, almost, to all of the roles we had in the organization in order to have just a good decision and not just, something written down in theory which might not have worked in practice.
Right, and time for team self-design event explanation. So the whole event went pretty well. I mean, before that, just a few days before, we had the team self-design event for 120 people brought from 3 locations into one place. Like, we first saw this huge hall, and we thought, yeah, we'll do that, like by one day. All of these people will find the best slots. Before that, we actually had 3-4 months of really good preparation, because we had the business domains, we explained them to the people, we had pre-mortems, we sat together with then current those teams, and we try to find out what are their worst fears, what can we address beforehand, what can we address at the event, and what we should be addressing after. And after all of this done, we try to paint the rosy future and to try to understand what would be the perfect explanation to them. And we did that as well. So we had like huge action item lists that we tried to do on different levels before the event. During the event, we had really nice presentations by the product owners, and people, in many cases, they had done their choices beforehand. So they had like my top 3 choices, and then they tried to get into the teams they wanted. The thing is, we gave people opportunity to actually change what they were doing. If you were the PHP developer and you wanted to start Java, you could do it. And I think we had several people changing their primary...
Well, we had people who changed locations.
That's true, and locations. And we had several rules. One was that all of the teams should be collocated, the product owner can be separate. The other room is that the number of people should be the same as the number of chairs. So we limited the number of people. And the third rule was that the last choice, like the board, should be happy with the team set in the end. Yeah,
it worked.
Yeah, it worked.
I mean, personally, I was surprised because I knew that exercises from smaller teams. I didn't know that this can work, especially not without fucking up the system afterwards. Because if you just give the freedom to the people, they come up and sort themselves into new products. The old products still remain. They run the system. And the day after, those people are just different. And I had to explain that heavily to the board of directors, because even as a founder in C-level, they were like, if you fuck that up, you'll fuck up the company. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I won't fuck it up. And I wasn't sure whether it worked, but it did. We had not more downtimes or nothing. So it just, especially the business continuity, which was from a general management perspective, the largest fear, nothing happened.
Maybe that's because of the FlixIgnition. The thing is, the team self-design event, stand-alone-ish is a very risky thing to do, especially, if you have 3 locations, more than 100 people, if you're changing, like the structure of the company. But if you have FlixIgnition then, or whatever, you can call it, you can make it, and the risks are much lower. So FlixIgnition was the period where we helped the team to get the infrastructure they wanted, but not to all of the teams, because that was pretty tough, but to 4 volunteer teams. And what we were asking for is actually to show in 4 weeks of this FlixIgnition period some demo of smallish self-contained system, smallish that they could produce in these 4 weeks without, any preparation beforehand. And we started with 4 teams. We ended with 3 because one of the teams had 70% of their members on vacations right after the team self-design events. Sorry, they were not thinking about that. We were not thinking about that either. But it all worked pretty well because the board was helping, because every location was supported by an Agile coach, because we had regular daily sync-ups, and I think that was massive success.
True, I forgot on putting that onto the, doesn't matter.
That's okay, people can read.
It was a success, considering that this was not part of the preparation. So we did the team self-design event and then realized, so how do we actually get on a technical level where we would like to be? And in difference to the TSDE, this was during all the process the largest top-down decision I had to take, because that was we're done and now I squeeze something fancy called stuff in there to prepare that. It started like you ignite an old car, but after a while, as Lucy said, it started and it ran quite smoothly And yes, of course, it's a success because it's still the foundation of where we currently are.
Right, and in comparison, Team Self-Design event was prepared for 4 months and FlixIgnition for 2 days. So like, that's how you make things agile sometimes.
And that's the current organization we run. You've been asking, what the fuck is a board? That's like, there is so many bullshit bingo names around. We also have some. The board means there are a couple of VPs who are mainly responsible for some strategic and visionary topics. They still have challenges here and there to not touch the system. And they act a little bit as executive sponsors for individual teams or areas of the system. But they should only watch and being helpful if there are certain escalations. The system itself is structured in those domains I've been talking of, and also, well, we're meanwhile 25, something, I don't know, many teams, and each team has exactly the roles needed. Usually they can decide by themselves, and then they just, together with the people managers, whatever, go to HR, either attract people internally, which happens quite often with POs, so we really steal from the business. Or they just come up with job postings and try to attract people. And as Lucy said initially, there is not so many hierarchies. So depending on how severe obstacles seem to be, it's pretty easy to also talk to me. There is no real rule. You can't do that or so. It's just, if I can help always, there is not much that I can do else but helping. I'm rather the worst programmer in the company. Meanwhile, not a good designer either. Agile coach, potentially, product owner. So those business people sometimes really have no fucking idea what the customer wants. So that would drive me nuts either. So I'm just trying to be, as I say, the chief organizational plumber or problem solver. And therefore you have to be touchable for your people.
Finally, the lessons learned. We have like 6 minutes left.
That's okay. That's kind of the last slide.
Okay. So the thing is, there are so many lessons learned that we'll start with some. There are many more behind. Okay, and
I start, right?
Yes, you do.
Because you started talking. So shared goal is important. True, we started with chapters first, and yes, that's been borrowed by Spotify. It didn't work, not only because of the amount. Those people didn't have a shared goal. They had no idea what to do. They were just grouped in chapters like, cool, I'm a chapter right now, so what do I do? So you really have to make sure that they have a shared goal. And what was the major topic I really would do different if I can repeat the story? I would do the TSDE first and then the chapter thing, because those horizontal structures giving governance and alignment useful, you should create the bus and therefore the pull for these kind of structures first, and then the structures, because we came up with the structures first and everybody was like, cool structure, don't get it. And kept doing whatever they did for a couple of weeks until we had TSDE. And ultimately, we found that with 4 clear defined chapters, it's much easier to have a shared goal and therefore they work.
Right, I would actually go on with, so the thing is, we have constant growth in our organization, and sometimes alignment is not that easy because, you know, when the teams are growing, it can be like, not 5 people, but 7 people, 9 people, 12 people. Like, we never had that big, but, you know, we might. So I find it really useful to understand what is the difference between synchronous and asynchronous meetings and to widely use them, especially when the team is growing. What it means, synchronous meeting, the whole team is in the meeting. That's easy, right? Scrum usually wants us to get all the team on board for every meeting, but that should not be the case for all of them. Asynchronous meetings helps the team gain trust, right? So you don't really need the whole team to decide like what this particular task should be done between, say, PHP developers only if you have some other technologies in the team. I would say that's very beneficial.
I just keep on doing mine, right?
Yeah, whatever.
Or you skipped the order, and I'm not good in order skipping. Time for preparation is important, and it's not that the whole company really, you know, did nothing for 3 months. We just brought in a couple of experienced guys and really took the time to talk to each and everybody. Yes, that slows the system, but then when we came to the day of days, Team Self-Design event, everybody knew what the rules were and how it's going to work. So the preparation is super important. Should I just continue or no? Yeah, okay. Business continuity. Well, this is an uncertain fear, and I have to admit I had it as well. This is something new, and if you restructure the whole organization, well, of course you wouldn't know how it works and if there is business continuity. I'm pretty sure if you take the people with you, they also all know, what the risk is. It's not like they want to harm their organization. So it's just like being brave and taking the step, and I'm pretty sure it won't hit anybody. It just will keep on running.
Right. I would actually, come to the most important point. Teams rock. I would say.
You skip things, right?
Yes, I do. So that's intentional.
All right.
Okay. The thing is that from all of the conclusions and lessons learned, I think this is the one, because when we are talking about autonomous teams, we're thinking about dev team and Scrum team. But the thing is, when we take all of the people who take care of the team, this is also Agile coach, people manager, and product owner. If they form the team, this is something that can really boost teams' productivity because they trust each other, and it really helps the team feel safe in the end.
True. So this one, you always said is important to you.
Yes.
So that's the last one.
Like
then.
Agile rocks, teams rocks. And there's
the balancing I meant.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So the thing that we, it's not really obvious from inside the system, but as soon as you step out, it becomes really obvious. All the systems are self-balancing. Before the team self-design event, my fear was that how can we let people change the technology? And then how can we check if they're really succeeding? But the thing is, when you get in the team where there are other people who are doing that, they will not let you do something worse than their standard. So they will keep on pushing people, they will keep on challenging them, and if that doesn't work, then that doesn't work. We had people who quit after 3, 4, 6 months after the team self-design event because they didn't really feel good in their new position or technology, and that was okay. That's how the systems make them balanced.
True. So now we're happy? Well, not really, because it's a continuous process. There will be next iterations and next adjustments. This is important. That is not meant to fit forever. What is meant to stay like forever is, as Lucy said, team rocks, because not the individuals per se, neither it's the management nor an engineer, but the unit as a team is what really creates output. And therefore, this is what to keep in mind. And why are you doing that is because there's quite some agenda. It's already, I can't disclose that exactly, but a large 9-digit number we're doing in terms of revenue, and we still maintain a 30% growth. So in absolute numbers, that's quite a bit. Doing only Ukraine, or we serve the Ukraine already, but just adding more buses to the Ukraine will not come to the revenue needed to maintain those growth. And we do that since last year profitable. This is a difference of some of the West Coast startups which burn money. Maybe that's super German behavior, don't know. But this is what we really want to maintain, the growth at the same time being profitable. And excellence means exactly what we were talking about, dealing with our organization, making sure that we have a very severe and stable and scalable and safe and cool, particularly tech platform. And at the end, well, it's about customer happiness, because only then people will come back. And those 4 objectives are the 4 top company objectives, which at the end are being decoupled and decomposed in the OKR system we're working with. But this is a different story. And now, the last seconds. Oh, sorry, questions out. No, seriously, questions? So when we started the team self-design event, it was 120 people, and now we're a little bit more than 200. And I touched base with a former colleague sitting here, and he was like, "How large are you?" And I'm like, "We're behind budget, unfortunately." "How large?" And we're like, 200. And he said like, "Oh, that's another 50 over the last couple of months." So it's quite a growth. It doesn't feel like that anymore since we're behind budget. But yeah, we grew over time from to a little bit more than 80 people. No, I'm just, did you never see Austin Powers? Sorry, go ahead. Hmm? Hmm. So I'm not quite sure whether the domains we have created can be there forever, because some of them were a little artificial. It was meant to mirror the business, so there's a logic behind, but there is, for certain areas, business data services, there is no business, right? It's just some internal stuff. And I'd like to get it a little leaner, because if we grow further and go broader, it's not 25 teams, but it's 30 or 40 teams. The question is, what structure is helpful in order, to make things clearer and help people to arrange, according a larger unit, so to say. Because at the end, the company structure doesn't matter, it matters what the customer sees. And that means we're currently playing around with tribes, because there are many teams serving the customer through the funnel, which is not every team in one domain, could be in different domains. And also, the question is, how can we make chapters work when they get larger? So now it's like 25 product owners meeting. That's meaningless. I mean, they just discuss, but you don't get shit done. It's too large. So we're looking for a structure which helps us to meet a size of 400, 500, 600 engineers. And one idea is to strengthen the domain, which was more a theoretical approach in order to cut the monolith into pieces. It could be that we give more power into that structure, or what we're currently doing already, playing around with how we call it tribes. It's differently as the speaker, like 2 sessions before. It's just a tribe is purely focused on what the customer has to interact with us, whether it's like the intention to buy something, or later on the drive itself, the ride, or even later if you have forgot your bag, to get that back. And this is not necessarily as that's structured, how the business is structured or a company, but it's important to the customer, because the customer doesn't really care whether it's operations, network planning, or marketing. The customer has an intention to drive. He drives and he maybe loses his bag, or she. And they don't care whether it's like, this is the operations VP, I don't, so these are thoughts, but it's not clear yet, because these thoughts literally started 3 or 4 months ago. And one of the reasons, one of the main topics for my last visit now in Kharkiv last week was to discuss these kind of things. Don't know yet. Maybe next year. Yeah.
Can I take that?
You can take
Yeah,
that.
good. So the thing is, we had in the very beginning rough stuff with OKRs, especially for engineers, because they couldn't really get, like, we are doing road mapping, then we are doing OKRs. Like, why do we have to do one and the same thing, like twice, right? But then we realized, so actually the OKR is something that is one level above the road mapping. So the business wants something, and we align with what they want with our side of the story. Say if the business wants safety as their objective, like to improve safety of their, say, domain this quarter, and we are going to use a new tool to check whether our applications are safe enough. So we have actually aligned with their OKR, but now we do that consciously, right? So it's like improve safety. Their objective, improve safety, our objective. We have different key results, right? As soon as we started doing it like that, then it makes sense. Wow, it really boosts our motivation. This is how we do it now.
And we take, this is a continuous process, like a roadmap towards whatever we want to reach, and we take a snapshot every quarter. And then the POs, together with the business counterparts, so the guys who have ideas or wishes or concerns, present that to the general management and say, like, this is what you're going to do in the next 3 months. And usually, like in the beginning, it was like, ooh, I don't know. The last 2 sessions were like, fine, thanks for explaining. Let's move on, and potentially where are areas where we can support. No, we didn't lose teams. We lost people. Well, lost is a bad term. I mean, that's a question of culture and behavior. It's not, the new team has taken over the responsibility, but obviously old team members supported them. I mean, we introduced at that point in time, I think accidentally also Slack, so they just formed certain groups around that. You can use any different tool, doesn't really matter. And fun fact is, there is still one guy who actually takes care about our search, so how things appear, interconnections, and he still kind of part-time maintains the agency settlement, so how we pay agencies, because the settlement people didn't manage that part of the system to cut out of the monolith yet. It's just, you know, give the people the freedom and encourage them that they, you know, not just drop the pen, but actually are approachable for the rest, because they're still the subject matter experts. So that is just the case. It's not like, hey, don't touch it.
You're welcome.
Considering that you were a startup in the beginning, by the way,
We are a startup.
yeah, I used FlixMobility like 5 or 6 times. Cool, perfect.
Thanks.
And how many times, from the startup perspective, you made pivots from in terms of business decisions? And what is the major pivot you've done?
Not so many, so I can't count, but it's not, I think it's less than 10. One of the major pivots we took is a mistake or many startups do, where they do things out of the perspective of the founders. In that case, we thought like nobody, literally no fucking body, will sit in a bus for 14 or more hours. This is not going to happen. And we came up with, I know. I mean, I learned that. You know, but this was not what we knew, because there were no buses in Germany. We were like, seriously, is that the case? It actually turns out it is the case. We didn't know. What we started is concentrating on mid-distance routes. It didn't work. We're like, because there is a need for long-distance routes and interchanges, and it didn't work. Mid-distance, we just had to reschedule. And one of my co-founders also said, we still have a main focus of point-to-point. And we didn't do interconnections at all in the beginning. And that was funny, because of one of my co-founders said, like, let's try that. I think it's 10% revenue, just like that. And we, rather quick and dirty, I remember, Vadim is laughing, so it's a yes, came up with a solution to do so. And seriously, like one day after another, 10% revenue increase. So those were two decisions we didn't take into consideration when we initially designed it, and changed it over time.
Cool, thanks.
Welcome.
When you have so many teams, one is like how often you shuffle them, and the second one is how do you make sure that teams actually rock? I mean, how do you measure or observe that the content of each team and say this is like the ultimate team?
Lucy can start with the rocking part, because it's basically her job.
Right, in a way. So, as for how we know the teams rock, we kind of talk to business very often, and the main if the business is satisfied with what we are producing and with the pace that we are producing it with, and they come to our sprint reviews and they say, hey guys, you rock, I think that's the ultimate. Then yes, we do rock. And apart from that, we have, so the thing is, one of the key things that comes with autonomy is the island thinking, right? If the other teams that depend on us in some ways or another, they can come to us and we can agree on doing some things together, and they say, you rock, that's another sign, right, that we are doing things great. The third point is, do individuals like coming to work? Is it really something that where they feel happy? That is like the third point. And this makes us probably, like, we don't really have any models that we assess the teams against. But we started, Spotify health check model is one, then we can do some other things, but mainly it's like we can see what is happening, and that's pretty much enough. As for shuffling teams, why? What for?
Because you can pick like one UI guy in this team, but maybe if this specific guy working in a different team,
Mhm.
that team will be more efficient. So sometimes we create teams out of thin air, but they are not optimal.
Right. So the thing is, the good team starts with the hiring process, and the hiring process can be like from the outside hiring, but also from the inside hiring. Right? It's possible that the person doesn't really feel good in the team, but then he can talk to the people manager and explain, and then they together. It's not like I take that person and put him into that team. It's like the long process of negotiation. It's possible to take the person from one team into another, but there is also team dynamics. Other teams should want this person. So like these are all of these things that make this process smooth, and we do it because it's important, that because the teams should rock.
So team reshuffling is an exception. And exactly because of Lucy said, to all my experience, whether it's like on theory, the forming, storming, norming parts of being becoming a team, or just because uncertainty in any case is not good. And stability, if it's managed properly and they are not just not moving, but just stable as a team, this is very much important. And therefore, either if someone says, I would like to change, or, it's usually driven by the individuals, and then they feel, something and it's not arranged. We try to avoid arrangements. This is like with arranged marriage, the same, I guess. It can work, but it doesn't have to.
Yeah, true. And another small thing, right? It's this forming, storming, norming, whatever. But there is also Richard Heckman who is saying that 60% of each team's success is the team set. So the team should really want to belong. Every individual should really want to belong to this team, and then the teams can rock. Like they have the biggest, success factor possible.
So, thank you very much, I guess. I'm like, we're off stage. Thanks.